who came from Cuba, right? Originally from Cuba? Huh? Your parents came? And you're going to go back, oh, yeah. It's going to be, and you won't need my approval. You just fly back in when I can just see that. It's going to be a great day, right? We're going to celebrate that separately. I just want to wait a couple of weeks. I wanted to wait a couple of weeks, but we'll be together again soon, I suspect, celebrating what's going on in Cuba. They want to make a deal so badly, you have no idea. He's doing some job, and your next one is going to be, we want to do that special Cuba. He's waiting, but he says, let's get this one finished first.
So continuing here with our analysis of the Don Roe Doctrine and Trump's geopolitical chess, as we have labeled it, I think it is a good time to begin speaking about Cuba. Because here you have a country that is in total collapse as we speak. They are quite literally running out of electricity on the island. I'm not exaggerating when I use the word collapse. And this is, of course, no accident. It's coming directly as a byproduct of Trump's toppling of Maduro. Because by cutting off the one lifeline in Venezuela that was propping up Cuba's flailing Marxist economy, they now have nothing left, and it's being widely reported that as their nation faces literal power outages and starvation, many Cuban policymakers are desperately reaching out to Washington right now and trying to make a deal. Very funny how they weren't doing that before, but you need to understand this is, of course, how leverage works, and you also likely assume that many leaders in Cuba are probably scared of the Maduro story repeating itself, and currently watching the U.S. operations in Iran, you must be assuming, oh, America is serious about this. And as we speak, Trump is hinting at a U.S. Delcy Rodriguez style takeover of Cuba. So we'll break down, guys, what that means. I also want to bring you an update on Venezuela itself, because the byproducts of the Maduro operation seem to be working quite well. Today, Energy Secretary Doug Burgum actually made a historic visit to the country of Venezuela itself to discuss the new relationship here between these two countries. And what is America getting out of it, for those of you who ask? Rampant access to things like gold, natural resources, oil, rare earth minerals, as it pertains to Cuba too, by the way. Cuba is also rich in natural resources that they simply refuse to use because, again, they're a terrible, crappy third world Marxist economy. But secondly, you mean to tell me you don't understand why it's a good thing to not have a hostile pro-Eastern Marxist regime just 90 miles from the U.S. mainland? Obviously, this is true. Obviously, there's a reason why it's been a headache for American policymakers for over 60 years now, right? What do we do about the Cuba question? But finally, right, this is something that many people thought would never be accomplished. It looks like in 2026, Trump may be making history by being the person to finally stop this regime in Cuba. We'll explain all of that. We'll also sort of bring you an update out of Iran because, I think when you watch what's happening in Venezuela, you watch what's happening in Cuba, that's also sending a message to the remnants right now of the Iranian government. Look, you can make a deal, okay? We can do this the easy way or we can do this the hard way, which Trump further hinted at. So we'll kind of put this whole picture together for you guys in today's video. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. We greatly appreciate the support, but it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And that said, I think it is relevant to start today's coverage with Venezuela itself. Because today, Energy Secretary Doug Burgum made a visit to the country, and take a listen to what it was largely about.
Interior Secretary Doug Burgum He's in Venezuela. He's there to help facilitate deals for rare earth minerals for U.S. companies. Edward Lawrence is with him. All right, Edward, what's Burgum's agenda?
Yeah, and Varney Stewart, this is the first trip for a cabinet secretary outside of or after we saw Operation Fury go into effect here. Now, the Interior Secretary says that this is a critical mission for him to come here and help rebuild not only this country, but also secure a new ally for the United States. He says that they are rebuilding this relationship through rare earth mineral deals that will come with American companies. Now, the secretary stepping off the plane about an hour ago. This is video you'll only see right here. He says the opportunities here are incredible for the country and the U.S. Could the oil from Venezuela help the global supply right now?
Well, absolutely. When part of unleashing the potential, getting Venezuelan production back to what it was decades ago, and that relationship between Venezuela and the U.S. relative to energy was always a key part of that partnership. And I think having diversified supply chains right now, people understand how important that is, because the production here can help keep energy prices down around the world.
So today's meetings are about the rare earth minerals. Venezuela has vast untapped resources. The Trump administration sees this as a strategic alternative to China for critical minerals. The deals that will eventually be made here could also increase the U.S. influence in Venezuela, replacing China, which had a foothold under the Maduro regime. The secretary has a number of big meetings over the next few days here, including one today with the new president, Delcy Rodriguez. He will meet with rare earth mining executives, as he has this morning, and there will be another one, as well as oil and natural gas executives.
Yeah, well, I really do wonder if the people who initially opposed the Maduro operation for ideological reasons can come around and now acknowledge that it was a success and it's working as intended. Because before you ask questions like, what did that have to do with us? How did that benefit the day-to-day lives of ordinary Americans? Gee, I don't know. Maybe the fact that our entire economy in modern life runs on things like oil, gas, and rare earth minerals. Yes, these things do have to come from somewhere. It was a serious threat, obviously, that China was exerting so much influence in our hemisphere over these things. Yes, the fact that likely Venezuela can become an alternative to China on rare earth minerals is a very important security issue going forward in the 21st century. I don't know if anyone remembers the whole COVID-19 pandemic, quote unquote, and everything that happened with global supply chains. I don't know if anyone noticed that US-China hostilities are rising as of recent times, but yes, it is a serious concern going forward. You don't want to be completely locked out of natural resources by what is becoming your top rival. Certainly, you don't want to be dependent on them for those types of things. And so, yeah, that is actually important to America, believe it or not. And lastly, the other national security question that has to be remembered here, at a time when obviously you can see what's going on in the Middle East and there's a global oil crisis and shortage because of it, it is actually extremely important for America to have diversified access to different natural resources. I understand talking about natural resources, it might sound boring, it might sound abstract, it might sound like it doesn't affect us. Again, our day-to-day lives turn on these key natural resources. And so, yes, it was actually smart before things get crazy in the Middle East, which I don't know if you've noticed, they tend to do that a lot, right? That actually, yes, the top oil producer in Latin America stops giving its oil to China, starts giving it to America instead. And by all accounts, the current Burgum meeting over in Venezuela with the new government appears to be a success. According to Axios today, the Trump admin is facilitating a large gold order between the U.S. and Venezuela with up to 1,000 kilograms of gold to be shipped to the U.S. So yes, we are actually increasing our hard gold reserves. And clearly, right, based on what Trump said about this, seems like it's going well. Delcy Rodriguez, who is the new president of Venezuela, is doing a great job in working with U.S. representatives very well. The oil is beginning to flow, unlike the last president, obviously. And the professionalism and dedication between both countries is a very nice thing to see, which likewise, Delcy Rodriguez, who you could basically say is a U.S. puppet, right? I'm not denying that, but here's what she had to say as well, thanking President Trump.
So I would like to also take this opportunity to salute and thank President Trump for his post, which he did just as we were meeting. Both delegations were meeting, and he sent us a post congratulating us and saluting the work we're doing together.
Yeah, so just to recap here, what is happening? Number one, Venezuela is improving because of this. The new president is already closing down the political prisons. Likely their economy itself is going to greatly benefit from this new relationship with the United States, so good for them. But as it pertains to us, what is the reality? We are making money from this. We effectively flipped what was a Chinese colony in our hemisphere to our own colony. And as a result of it, China has been currently, right now, they're being booted out of the Middle East. They're being booted out of our own Western hemisphere as well. And these are all, when you look at the geopolitical chessboard, right? Huge wins, huge victories for America. We've effectively checkmated China when it comes to many different facets of their global influence. Sure, they still will be an economic powerhouse. They still will be able to sell their goods to a lot of places. But in terms of sort of this hard power, having true allies, true puppet states around the world. Two of their biggest puppets right now are falling in our favor, and that's very significant. But of course, one of the countries left to talk about here in that board of dominoes in the chessboard is, of course, Cuba. I don't need to remind anyone the history of Cuba, but it is the simple reality that for the past several decades now, the flailing Cuban economy post-Soviet Union has been entirely propped up by the Maduro regime in Venezuela. Why is that? Because they were basically getting all of their oil at a very cheap, subsidized price from Maduro because of the ideological sort of leftist global crusade. And obviously, as a result of Maduro being shut down, as a result of the United States seizing sanctioned oil tankers following the operation, that is no more. And so what's happening right now on the island is that they're in a complete energy crisis. They've effectively been checkmated. Their country is in collapse. And as of late, Trump has had the following to say now about Cuba and how a friendly, non-violent, we don't even need military force necessarily, but a friendly takeover of Cuba here may be imminent, which would basically be the last domino, again, to fall in the Western Hemisphere, given the fact, too, I would point this out as well, that countries like Mexico that were previously selling oil to the Cuban regime because of the Don Road Doctrine, right, because of the Trump pressure campaign on Latin America that a lot of people don't understand, has stopped doing so. A lot of the other more moderate leftist governments in Latin America have said, okay, we're going to distance from Cuba because we're scared of the United States. And so what is happening right now? Total hemisphere dominance, a total lockout for China. Take a listen, though, to what Trump had to say.
What kind of significant change could be coming at any time for Cuba?
We could very well end up having a friendly takeover of Cuba.
All eyes on Cuba as President Trump hints at the possibility of historic change on the island nation.
The Cuban government is talking with us, and they're in a big deal of trouble, as you know.
For nearly a month, the United States has cut off virtually all oil from reaching Cuban shores, a blockade made possible by the arrest of Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro in January and recent trade pressure on Mexico.
Cuba's doing very badly. They're failing. Cuba right now is, to put it mildly, a failing nation.
The United Nations says daily life in Cuba is becoming increasingly fragile, with essential services scaling back across the country. The island is estimated to have just a few weeks of fuel left on hand.
Yeah, so it's sounding like what we're about to see, or perhaps what's quietly already happening behind the scenes right now in Cuba, is something along the lines of the Delcy Rodriguez option. Cuban leaders understand that they're completely checkmated. They have no choice, okay? So either they can completely collapse as a country, or they can start giving in to U.S. demands and essentially relinquishing to us whatever it is that we want, which I would have to imagine a big component of that is stop allowing China and Russia to have a foothold in our hemisphere. This is not going to be accepted. You are with us now. You're on our side, basically, whether you like it or not. And there you have it. By the way, worth noting that Trump today, once again, still is reiterating a similar message to members of the Iranian government, including the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. Hey, you have the option to take over your own government and drive these ideological, fanatic, anti-Western radicals out of power. You have the option to do what is genuinely within your best interest as well. So take a listen.
And I'm once again calling on all members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, the military and the police, to lay down their arms. They're only going to be killed. And now is the time to stand up for the Iranian people and help take back your country. You're going to have a chance after all these years to take back your country. Accept immunity. We'll give you immunity. And we'll be giving you really the right side of history, because that's what it is. So you'll be perfectly safe with total immunity, or you'll face absolutely guaranteed death. And I don't want to see that. They don't want to see it either. We also urge Iranian diplomats around the world to request asylum and to help us shape a new and better.
Yeah, so it does sound like Trump is still trying to find some type of Maduro-style option in Iran as well. Whether that person exists, I'm not here to speculate on that, but I will say if it is possible, I think that largely this sort of Trump style of regime change actually is a lot smarter. Contrary to what some people are trying to argue, I don't think you're watching neocon style nation building projects actually taking place here, because no, we're not doing that, right? It turns out that you don't need to invade an entire country, occupy it for years, purge their whole government, and try to nation build your own Western-style democracy from scratch. That is expensive, it's costly, it's going to require a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to defend the legitimacy of, and it's just overall not that nice of a thing to do. On the flip side, what Trump is basically trying to push here is, hey, we can maintain stability, right? We can basically keep the ruling structure of the government in place, but take out a couple guys and find whoever is willing to act as our puppet to defend our own strategic interests, which is what this is really about, right? America defending its own interests. It's not for us to necessarily say long-term, hey, the government should look specifically like this or that when it comes to domestic issues. It is simply, right, we have certain national security interests. We do not want a nuclear-armed Iran in the 21st century, backed as a powerful ally of China, potentially shutting down the Strait of Hormuz and global trade in a manner because they would be nuclear-armed that we can't do anything about it. They can checkmate us and basically force us to lift all of their sanctions and do whatever it is that they want us to do. So we're going to avoid that. We're going to secure our strategic interests right now while the iron's hot, while we're strong, while they're weak, while the opportunity is there, while China's not in a position to militarily defend it, right? And secure our strategic interests. Same thing in Venezuela, same thing in Cuba. We're going to secure natural resources for ourselves. We're going to drive China out of them and out of our hemisphere. And that's really what we're there to do. And I think, frankly, what you're watching is a brand new foreign policy doctrine emerge from Trump that I understand some people, even on the right wing, are not ready necessarily to grasp. But I'm just going to say I see the vision, which is sort of this. Again, it's not neoconservatism, but it's not exactly libertarian populism either, right? It's sort of this very practical doctrine of what you could almost call American neo-imperialism in the 21st century, where America's just recognizing, right? We are a global empire in a sense, like it or not. I mean, that's just the reality. I mean, we may not be the empire in the traditional sense. We don't have formal colonies, but let's be real. We have a lot of informal colonies. We have tributary states. We have influence all around the world. That's sort of what imperialism looks like in the 21st century. China across the water is trying to build its own. You could argue Russia and the EU are smaller players, but they're also sort of parts on the chessboard there as well. And so that's the reality. It's also the reality, by the way, no matter how much people just want to say America first as a slogan, that it just factually would not benefit America to lose this empire, okay? You can ask the UK, by the way, right? They surrendered their empire in the name of kind of focusing on their country first. Did it work? No. Because a lot of your wealth, a lot of your nation's prosperity is tied to things like, yes, that natural resource access, global influence, trade routes, like those things are important. They matter to us. They matter to the prosperity of our country. And so really, I think the 21st century doctrine for America needs to be a recognition, first of all. It is an arms race, basically, between the American empire and the Chinese empire. Whoever wins is going to benefit. Whoever loses is not going to benefit, and their country is going to get ostensibly worse, right? And it is in our interest to secure, right, potential natural resources, trading routes, and drive hostile regimes out, around the world. But at the same time, okay, I think it's important likewise that we do not make the mistakes of the neocons and we do not overstretch ourselves, right? Get too arrogant like we did in 2003. Oh, we're the sole superpower in the world right now. We can do whatever we want. Let's just try to build a democracy in Iraq for this just vain idealism, this sense of patriotism. No, we're not saying we need to do that. All we're saying is as an empire, we just need to defend our strategic interests as they currently exist. I think, by the way, that's what you're watching right now. And again, that's sort of my stance on this, okay? I'm not saying we should get into another Iraq. That was a bad idea. By the way, a lot of empires collapse because they get themselves into forever wars. They overstretch themselves. We don't want to get into that position. But when we can act to defend our strategic interests, I also reject the idea, frankly, that America is just this isolated nation state with no role anywhere around the world. I think that actually is contrary to really even the history of America since 1890. Like, let's be real about this. We are, whatever you want to call it, a global superpower, an empire, something. We have a lot of interests around the world. Those interests actively benefit our country, okay? Let me just say it this way, right? It would do us no favors for our economy if a bunch of countries, let's say, chose to go off of the global reserve currency as the US dollar, right? They chose to just stop sending us natural resources and we have this huge supply chain shortage. So it doesn't benefit America to be totally isolated. It doesn't benefit America to just be neocons about it, right? It benefits America to take practical steps to secure their strategic interests. And that really, I think, is the Trump foreign policy doctrine, right? That's why on Inauguration Day, he said, China out of the Panama Canal, we're coming after Greenland, we're going to secure the Arctic, right? That's why he went after Maduro. That's why he's currently going after Cuba. That's why he's even more controversially on the right wing right now, I would argue, going after Iran, right? Because to secure our empire in the 21st century, it is vital now while we have the power to effectively checkmate China before they can really get started trying to catch up to us, right? So that's the way I see it. I don't know, I might write maybe like an essay or a members only video kind of explaining this a lot more, but just again, that's sort of the realization I had and why my views shifted on foreign policy from being sort of this hardcore like nationalist isolationist on the issue to being more pragmatic and recognizing, hey, the Iraq war traumatized us all, but it's also important to recognize this is not the world of 2003 anymore. It's not the US military of 2003. The chessboard is different, and so we have to evolve strategically, right? Absolutely, we need to learn key lessons from Iraq. We should not repeat those mistakes. That's why, by the way, I said, right, it's important that we get Iran wrapped up as quickly as possible. And yes, if we can find a potential puppet in Iran to do the job for us, that is an ideal outcome, right? I'm not going in screaming these slogans about democracy or something. Notice how I've never said that. What I have said, right, is yes, there's a global security issue for America in the 21st century over that Persian Gulf, over the Strait of Hormuz, and the Chinese influence over a potentially nuclear-armed Iran. That's the whole point. That's what we're after. If we can eliminate that threat, then America's done its job. If we get our own interests out of the Middle East, then America's done its job. That's sort of the almost self-interested, I think, foreign policy doctrine we need to have going forward. And that kind of, again, explains the recent chess moves you've seen Trump make on Greenland, on Panama, on Venezuela, on Cuba, on Iran right now. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, we might talk more about this soon because I do want to kind of go deeper into that. But for now, guys, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.